Hello, and welcome to a brand new season of And the Runner-Up Is. Before we get things started, I just wanted to note that this week's recording will sound slightly different. That's because I recorded with my guest in the same room, which I normally do not do. So just giving you a heads up there. Now let's do this. This week on the show, we'll travel back in time to the 1998 Oscars, which awarded the films of 1997. Curtis Hanson recruited Kevin Spacey, Kim Basinger, and two unknown Australian actors at the time whose names happened to be Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce, to create an engrossing film noir crime thriller, LA Confidential. The film was a massive critical success, sweeping the year-end Critics Awards, but then a little movie called Titanic was released in December and overshadowed everything. Titanic went on to win 11 Oscars, with LA Confidential only picking up 2. So why was LA Confidential unable to overcome the sinking ship? We'll explore all this and more, including a bonus chat about this past week's Academy changes, as we discuss how the Oscar almost went to LA Confidential. Welcome back to And the Runner-Up Is, Season 2. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Jacobson, and today with me I have a friend of mine, not someone from the big awards community, but someone who is generally interested in awards, but more on a casual level, you could say.
More obsessive.
Yes. Okay. And that is my friend Ashley Kus.
Hello.
Hi. And you are a journalist, I should mention.
Yes.
The film, not the film journal, excuse me.
The
record journal. Yeah. Film journal is another thing.
Yeah, no,
okay.
The record journal.
Yes. So, welcome to the show. You're my season premiere guest.
Yay! That's so special.
Yes. So today we are going to be talking about another fun year, which is 1997. And that is the year that Titanic won Best Picture and pretty much everything else in the world. But I and many others believe that LA Confidential was the true runner-up to Titanic. So let's first get into a summary of LA Confidential. So LA Confidential is based on the novel of the same name by James Ellroy that centers on 3 LAPD officers, including the straight-laced Deputy Lieutenant Ed Exley, played by Guy Pearce, rogue officer Bud White, played by Russell Crowe, and narcotic detective Jack Vincennes, played by Kevin Spacey. And he also does some consulting work on the TV show Badge of Honor. And so everything kind of unravels when there is a massacre at the Night Owl coffee shop. And so we kind of gradually discover cover-ups and corruption that is hidden within the LAPD itself. And so on top of Pearce, Crowe, and Spacey, we also have Kim Basinger, James Cromwell, Danny DeVito, Ron Rifkin, and David Strathairn. Really good cast once again. And so it was directed by Curtis Hanson, who also wrote the screenplay with Brian Helgeland. And the movie made $64 million in the U.S. and $126 million worldwide. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards and won 2 of those, but not, of course, Best Picture. So, Ashley.
Yes.
What are your thoughts overall on LA Confidential?
I thought the character development was great, considering how many characters were really involved in the story, you know, not just secondary characters. I mean, there was a lot of, main storylines that they really developed well. I was pretty impressed, actually. It's kind of hard to do with that many characters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
very well developed.
I like that most of them, I mean, it's funny because most of these actors were pretty, not as well known as they are today back then. So this was kind of a chance that the director took. So I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, so Russell Crowe, everyone knows Russell Crowe now, but
right.
At the time, Russell Crowe was very much an unknown, as was Guy Pearce. So.
Right. Right. So very interesting that kind of, I mean, that pretty much launched their careers going forward was this movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people don't know about this movie either unless they look at the Oscar history. So it was a very
slightly underappreciated.
Yeah, I mean, it was really complicated storylines and
very true.
Lots of dialogue and very kind of as I said, lots of different storylines woven in there.
Yeah. And it's very intellectual kind of film. I think it's a movie that you love more for its intelligence than you love just as something you just get swept up in emotionally. And so obviously that draws some interesting comparisons to Titanic. We have two very, very different kinds of movies doing very different things.
Right.
So LA Confidential for me is a movie I saw probably in high school, I think, that era. And it's another one of these movies, as I said, with Traffic, where I was probably a little too young to fully grasp the entirety of the story.
Probably.
And so on the second watch, I was really, really, again, impressed by it. For all of its intricacies. I think it introduces itself well with Danny DeVito narrating in the beginning.
I love the typewriter.
Yes, about the glitz and glamour of Hollywood and how underneath the surface, obviously, there's all this corruption and things. And I also just love, love, love this ensemble cast. I think they're all really terrific in many ways, and it's kind of a shame to me that Kim Basinger is the only person that got a nomination for it. I think there's probably some category confusion as far as, we have 3 male leads here, and it's kind of, you can't really say if one of them is clearly better than the other 2, which kind of leads to a vote splitting, and then none of them get in.
Right.
I think that's probably what happened here.
She was great, though. I mean, her character, she pretty much stole the show. The movie. I mean, she was really the star of the movie.
And that is a classic kind of supporting kind of thing to do, is to be a scene stealer.
Yeah. And
to miss her when she's not on screen.
Right.
And things like that. Another thing I really like about the movie is that it's a lot less sort of cheaply nostalgic than I remembered it being. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like I remember it just for the poster is very clearly evocative of that classic film noir of the 40s and the 50s and everything. Right. And when you look at this movie, you do see all of the atmosphere of the production design in the background. You see all of that, but in many ways it feels very contemporary in certain ways. It's filmed in a very contemporary way. It doesn't just kind of try to emulate the style of the past as much.
I think it's also a classic crime thriller where you have those little, almost like a mystery, yeah. Almost like a mystery novel where you have all those little clues kind of scattered around scenes and then you kind of put it together at the end.
Yeah, and everything, I feel like it all just kind of falls into place so well. And I think that's obviously a credit to the novel as well as the screenwriters for being able to adapt this novel, which, from what I understand, because I haven't read it, it's a lot more complicated, from what I understand. And
seems like it would be. I mean, it was a complicated storyline to begin with. Yeah.
And the fact that the movie is more streamlined than what the novel was makes me feel like reading the book would be a lot to take in. But I think they do a really good job of just, again, streamlining everything and making sure that the audience kind of understands things, and you do have to pay attention, which is a thing for some people that kind of prevents them from loving a movie because it doesn't take advantage of just trying to go for the cheap seats or anything. It really wants you to pay attention to it.
Well, I feel like it's a movie you can watch a couple times and find different things that you didn't see before.
Yeah.
Which is kind of not rare, but it's not as common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I thought it portrayed Hollywood very well, by the way.
It really
in a not
did.
Cliche way. Old Hollywood, but not,
exactly.
Not in that cliche, as you said, not in that cheesy.
Nostalgic.
Yeah.
Just for its own sake sort of thing. Yeah. Let's talk about the performances in the movie. we alluded to the fact that we do like Kim Basinger. Is there any in particular other actors that you were impressed by?
Well, Russell Crowe. Yeah, I mean, he really stood out to me. He was
very, very young Russell Crowe.
Very young Russell Crowe. At first, I didn't even know. At first, I was like, wow, it doesn't even look like it now. But that's probably not good. But no, I mean, I think it was, as I said, I think it's interesting that he picked fairly well, not known actors, and he was one of them. But I think he did a really good job. I think he stood out, definitely.
For me, I was actually more impressed by Guy Pearce because I think it's a little bit more of a difficult role to play because he's, as I said, very straight-laced, and he has a lot of, I think he has a big background to sort of draw upon and draw out from his character because, as he explains, his father was gunned down by this mysterious assailant. And so a lot of it is him trying to prove himself and prove that he can be just as good of a police officer as his father, and that that whole story.
Well, I really like the contrast between the two of them too.
Exactly. Yeah.
I thought that was a really strong contrast, but also
very well
again
defined.
well defined, but also not super, obvious where there was no other character development going on because they both have different. They both kind of draw on each other, borrow from each other.
For sure. Yeah. And what do we make of Kevin Spacey? Difficult to judge in the lens of 2018.
It's difficult to judge in 2018 because he's such a scumbag in this movie. I mean, I'm positive. I think he played it very well.
Okay.
Personally, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't acting.
Was it a stretch,
But, yeah, was it really a stretch? Not sure. I mean, I don't think he stole the show or anything. I think he added to the story, obviously, because he was working with that tabloid, but
yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to judge now, but I feel like back then it was probably a really impressive performance by Kevin Spacey.
Probably.
Yeah.
He was 2 years off of his first Oscar win for The Usual Suspects. He's the top billed here, so he's the only person who at that time had an Oscar.
Yeah, I mean, he was the only person, exactly, and who people really knew. And
exactly.
You put one Oscar winner in there, or nominated Oscar actor, then it's probably going to draw a little bit more than if you just had unknown actors.
Exactly. And it is quite ironic, I think, that Kevin Spacey does technically have the least amount of screen time between the three leads.
Yeah.
Most of it, I wouldn't say most of it, but by the end it certainly becomes a lot more about Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce.
Yeah. I feel like that was a choice, too.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't so popular.
Sure. And I think that honestly kind of gives a surprise for the audience.
Yeah.
Which is to say, our main star, this happened to him. Mm-hmm. And we can get into spoilers because this is a 21-year-old movie. So, we're fine.
We're fine.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to see LA Confidential, first of all, I recommend it. Now shut off this podcast and go watch it, and now come back.
I love Danny DeVito, too. I mean, I always love him. I feel like he kind of plays himself sometimes, but, he kind of plays the same.
And you can't really picture anyone else but him.
You really
in this
can't.
kind of just sleazy.
I love how he narrated it, again, in not a cliche way. It was a really interesting narration that he gave. Obviously, it wasn't throughout the whole movie, which that would have been terrible, but
I'm just trying to picture the entire movie narrated by Danny DeVito.
Yeah, no, I mean, I liked his, he was great. I mean, I think he was pretty well known at the time.
Yeah. I mean, this is post, playing the Penguin and everything.
Exactly.
He was well known.
Yeah, so again, another well known, but also in the background, so that's interesting too.
Yes. I wanted to talk about Kim Basinger because
I love her.
Okay, well, good.
I mean, hair goals all the way. I can't even. Just her expressions and the way she just took over the scenes was incredible.
Okay, so this is where I differ.
I don't know.
Because for me, I don't see a winning performance here. I think she does add a lot to the movie.
Yeah.
And she kind of breaks up the episodic scenes of trying to solve the mystery and everything.
Well, for being a pretty male-led movie, I feel like she did a really good job of putting herself out there and not just being the secondary female character.
Right.
That's what I liked about it.
Yeah, and that's totally fair, and a lot of people do like her performance in this, but for me, I just didn't feel like it was enough, almost, because I think there are other performances in that supporting actress field that I kind of prefer more, and I kind of feel like they went with her because they like the movie.
Yeah,
and they kind of wanted to
that.
throw it a bone, and she was the only person, she was the only actor from the movie even nominated, so they wanted to give it that.
I could definitely see that. Yeah, I mean, it definitely deserved something. Yeah. I mean, because it was a pretty incredible movie for 1997, especially given all the other movies that were nominated that year. But, I mean, I just thought she was a very powerful female lead. I mean, right away when she's introduced, it's like, she's there.
And I found it really cool, actually, how she's introduced, because she, like, has the hood up and everything. And it's like, she's like this otherworldly spirit
like,
that just,
literally
like,
mysterious.
walks in. And
when the Christmas music is playing, and, can we talk about the Christmas theme in here?
Yeah.
Because I thought it was really interesting that we set this scene at Christmas time.
Right.
I mean, it's a very violent movie, and Christmas,
and that's always an interesting
is not violent.
Contrast.
Yeah. It was an interesting contrast, because you're also in LA, which we don't see snow. You know what I mean? So it's Christmas time's usually associated with a winter scene or something winter, cold. Yes. Which I just thought was really interesting, that, like, this, you're in California, it's obviously not snowing, but yet it's Christmas, but it doesn't really look like Christmas except for the lights and, like, some references to Christmas. And Christmas
and there's
time,
obviously the bloody Christmas incident in the prison.
Right. So I don't know what they were trying to do there. I mean, obviously, I think the book probably took place during Christmas time, maybe. I'm just curious of what that choice was for that kind of setting, if it would have mattered if it wasn't at Christmas time. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting.
It's an interesting little detail.
Yeah.
Again, I do think it is for some of the contrast, obviously. And there is a lot of contrast in the movie as well, because it is set in Los Angeles, which is the city of angels, city of dreams, where all these amazing things happen, but secretly there's all this crappy stuff underneath the surface that people don't want to look at, people don't want to talk about.
I mean, even like the scene where, the domestic violence, you see it through the window, and all the lights are lit up, and you have, like, all this cheeriness outside. I mean, that's that's a pretty obvious... It's all very
metaphorical.
Yeah, it's a pretty obvious metaphor, but I liked how it played the scenes. It also kind of literally lit up the scenes, because a lot of these take place at night.
Yeah, very dark.
So that's...
Dark movie.
Yeah, it is a dark movie, so... I just thought it was interesting, and obviously it's not throughout the whole movie. Christmas time ends eventually, but I don't know. That just oddly fascinated me.
That just stood out to you.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about any specific scenes throughout the movie that stood out? Because I wanted to talk about the ending, because I think the ending is really well shot and just really striking and exciting to watch, but also, it's an action scene. It's a big shootout in this dark house, and
getting very dark.
Yep. And so it's Russell Crowe and Guy Pearce who have decided to team up, obviously, because they've realized that the police chief, played by James Cromwell, is very, very corrupt and wants to take over for the mob boss, something Cohen, I don't remember.
I can find it.
I was going to say Michael Cohen.
I don't think that's right.
Mickey Cohen. Close enough.
Cohen. You were close.
Yeah.
You were close.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually a really insane last scene. I mean, not that this movie was there was really no part that was super slow, but that kind of sped everything up as well.
Yes, because I think a lot of the movie is actually like the police force against the general idea of corruption, and like everything's kind of a mystery for a very long time, and then it becomes very clear that the James Cromwell character, the police chief, is behind a lot of it. and suddenly the stakes, I think, are a lot higher and a lot more compelling, and everything does speed up.
It's all really a build-up to that scene.
Yeah, and it's the kind of twist where we have, obviously, James Cromwell shoots Kevin Spacey, and that's a big twist.
That he died. I mean, to have a character, as I said, a known actor, die is kind of not done a lot.
Yeah, I love the choice.
Yeah.
Artistically.
Well, I mean, now we do. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, I just love the idea of watching Kevin Spacey die on screen.
Don't sue us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was interesting, and the way it was done was really interesting too, because it wasn't this big action scene either. He just kind of sitting there, and it just happens, and I was like, oh my god.
And I'm thinking, like, if you're watching this and you're kind of like fading away because you just think it's like a regular dialogue scene, and then suddenly, like, bam. Yeah. It's like, whoa, okay, now I'm awake. Right?
And it wasn't a cheap, effort to get your attention either. It really worked in that story.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So I just love the way it becomes more focused on, obviously, James Cromwell being behind everything. But I think by the end, you still have the sense that just because James Cromwell is taken out doesn't mean there isn't still corruption.
Right, like, because it's not all tied up with a bow.
Right, because at the end, we see that, Guy Pearce has come clean about everything in the end to the rest of the police officers, and they want to just cover it all up because they know that the media will have a field day with this and it will ruin their reputation. And so we still have corruption going on in many facets of this community, and I just found that to be really subtle but also very smart and truthful, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought that was I liked that it wasn't all tied up in a neat bow. I don't really think that was the theme of 1997 for a lot of movies. I'm not, it just, not all of them ended happily ever after, so I kind of liked, obviously, I kind of liked how that was done. Yeah.
And it ends, obviously, of course, with them riding off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Russell Crowe and Kim Basinger. So there was still that homage to the film noir-esque.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely did that on purpose, though,
of course,
because it's 1950s, and they're giving kind of that impression of glamorous Hollywood, old Hollywood.
Yeah. But I just wanted to ask you from, obviously you're a journalist, so I wanted to ask you what your take is on the portrayal of the media and journalism in this movie.
Well, it's kind of hard for me to say, too, because it was in 1950.
Yeah.
So you're drawing off the 1950 journalism field, which I don't know a heck of a lot about, but, I mean, I think it was pretty to point. I mean, that was a time when tabloids were coming out, when celebrities were a big thing to report on. It really was around that time that started developing with tabloid magazines, and that being considered journalism. That not like today where you got like the Inquirer and like People magazine. No, that was something that people were really interested in, were celebrities.
Especially in Los Angeles, of course.
Especially in Los Angeles, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was interesting that was played into it. I mean, it fascinated me because I'm a big nerd, but I don't know if anyone would really, they would kind of just think, oh, tabloid, but that really was, I feel like, historically accurate.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I found it interesting how it portrayed the relationships between media and the police and other kind of public officials, and how they all kind of feed off of each other and help each other in certain ways, and in other ways you have to watch out for them, things like that. Did that kind of resonate with you at all, just as a journalist who is often talking to certain people?
I mean, some of it was a little cringeworthy because I'm like, no,
right.
I mean, because we don't help each other out that much. That's it's a little biased.
Right.
So obviously, that kind of just adds, I feel like, to the corruption that they were trying to portray through the tabloid. I mean, I think it was a major part of this movie because tabloids are scandalous, and the whole movie revolves around scandal and corruption. Yeah. So I think that just added to it, just, set the scene a little bit more. Just drawing more corruption, just a little more corruption.
Yeah, it's
scandal.
everywhere. It's everywhere.
It also kind of explains, the growing obsession with celebrities and famous people.
Especially at that time.
Yes, especially at that time, that growing obsession of wanting
we
to
have to know
every
everything
little
about their
detail.
personal lives.
Exactly, yeah, and how that could be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. And how, obviously we have this scene where it's kind of set up that Simon Baker, by the way, his first role, Simon Baker.
Oh, wow.
The Mentalist, a.k.a., and many other things. But this was his debut role. He is this actor who is being set up to have this gay relationship with, I don't remember who, the Ron Rifkin character.
Right.
So one of the people in the police. And how that's all set up. First of all, Kevin Spacey's involvement in that scene alone really skeeved me out. Because, he's talking about how, it'll be our little secret.
Yes.
And I'm really weird. God, this is very dated. This is not good. This is not good. Fast forward.
Yeah, that was a little strange. That was definitely weird that he was involved in that scene.
Yeah, a little unsettling.
Back then, I'm assuming wasn't an issue. Maybe it was secretly. I don't really know. But
yeah,
I thought that. The whole film is very timeless in that it takes place in that period. So whatever happens, that's what happened back then.
Yeah,
it's not like you're watching it in 1997 and be like, wow, that's yikes.
Right. Yeah. So, are there any other last details you wanted to iron out before we move on to the Oscar segment?
The TV police drama series, right? Badge of Honor.
Badge of Honor.
That's kind of funny, right? Because there's all these cop shows now. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
And obviously it's cute because it's Badge of Honor, even though most of these people are not honorable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too because it's kind of showing the police in a different light than obviously everyone else is seeing them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was an interesting aspect as well.
And that's especially true, I think, in the 90s, specifically in Los Angeles. I think this kind of police corruption idea really resonated with people in Los Angeles in the 90s.
Yeah,
obviously, we had Rodney King and a lot of big issues.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So, a few other things I just wanted to mention. I really enjoyed the scene where they think that there is a Lana Turner prostitute lookalike, and it turns out to be the real Lana Turner. That was funny. A rare moment of levity in the film. And
I know, not a lot of breaks between all the trauma.
Exactly. And also, I just really liked the usage of film noir-esque music throughout the movie, because it does have those evocative themes of film noir, but I don't think it's filmed in a way that's exactly film noir. It is a dark movie, but it's not really that shadowy or, obviously, like we said, nostalgic. But I think the music specifically draws out that sort of evocative feeling. So,
right.
Those are my thoughts on LA Confidential. I think it's a great movie, and I highly recommend it. It is on Netflix, so you have no excuse.
No.
Any other thoughts for you?
No. Okay. No, I thought it was a really interesting film. As I said, it takes a lot of you have to think a lot when you're watching.
Yeah, you have to pay attention. You have to engage with it.
It really plays out like I'm not surprised that it was adapted from a novel.
Yeah,
because it does play out like a true story.
Yeah, exactly, and a true mystery crime.
Yes, true mystery. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we come back, we will be talking about why LA Confidential lost Best Picture to a little movie called Titanic.
There's blood on your shirt. Is that an integral part of your job?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy it?
When they deserve it.
Did they deserve it today?
I'm not sure.
But you did it anyway.
Yeah. Just like the half dozen guys you screwed today.
Well, actually, it was only 2. You're different, Officer White. You're the first man in 5 years who didn't tell me I look like Veronica Lake inside of a minute.
You look better than Veronica Lake. Pierce Patchett.
He takes a cut of our earnings and invests it for us. Doesn't let us use narcotics, and he doesn't abuse us. Can your policeman's mentality grasp those contradictions?
He had you cut to look like Veronica Lake.
No. I'm really a brunette. But the rest is me. And that's all the news that's fit to print.
And we're back.
Hi.
Hi. Nobody has replied that quickly before. I was taken aback.
Hey.
Okay.
It's me again.
So, LA Confidential was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actress, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, and Best Sound. And it won 2 of those, Supporting Actress for Kim Basinger and Adapted Screenplay. So before the Oscars, LA Confidential was a huge hit with critics. It currently, by the way, has a 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. There's only 1 negative review.
It's from Kevin.
Yes, I bashed it. Yes. When I was like 7. Anyway, it was a huge hit with critics. It swept pretty much every critics organization before the industry awards. It also won the Critics' Choice for Best Picture, and it won the Writers Guild Adapted Screenplay Award. And otherwise, Titanic did very, very well with precursors, including winning the Golden Globe, the Producers Guild, and the Directors Guild. So, let's talk about why Titanic won Best Picture and why LA Confidential lost Best Picture. Because this is interesting. Mm-hmm. Titanic, as you may or may not know, I'm not sure, was kind of considered, like, before people saw it, something that might be a disaster. As far as, like, you know...
It was way over budget, right?
Yeah, James Cameron's spending so much money. Mm-hmm. This could be a huge flop. And
Celine Dion was added, like, last minute.
That's true. Yeah. And LA Confidential was, like, this movie that people were really championing as far as critics and everything. Obviously, there is a difference between critics and people in the industry who vote on the Oscars. But by and large, the critics were like, LA Confidential is the movie you should, like, you know,
Which
exalt.
one was released first? Curious.
LA Confidential came out in September.
And Titanic
came out in December.
In December. Oh, yeah. So that's interesting. So LA Confidential came out first.
Yeah. So it had
that advantage until
until
this massive movie
and this massive iceberg came and just disrupted everything.
I think the fact that Titanic had such low expectations helped it a lot because
That's true.
It blew up, especially with Celine Dion. I mean, that song is like
My
the
Heart
most
Will Go
popular song. I think it hit the Billboard Top 100 that year more than once. I think it remained on the top 100 for a while, right?
The only song that mattered for 3 months.
And she still performs it.
Yeah.
So, and people know her for that song.
Mostly, yeah. I think that's
Mostly
like her most
for that song.
known
Yeah, I mean, she
thing.
wasn't that well known either.
Well, kind of.
But she was also added like last minute. They had to find someone to do the soundtrack for us, the theme song. Mm-hmm. Titanic has a theme song, by the way.
Yes.
And I mean, I think Titanic is based on feeling.
Correct.
Whereas LA Confidential is that very, you have to think about it.
Yeah.
You have to think about the story and think about the characters and think about little details.
Right.
Titanic, I think you can just watch.
Yeah.
And not have to think about it.
That's the thing, is that a lot of movies I've covered on this show, because they are runners up. Sorry, English major. I had to correct myself there. A lot of the runners up are very critic-friendly movies because they're very intellectual, and they are movies that people think, like, I should like this movie because people are saying that it's good and that it's intelligent and that it's thoughtful and it's not this kind of stupid blockbuster thing where I don't have to think, you know? Whereas, we do have Titanic, and it is a lot more emotional. And you get a lot more, I think, invested in the characters, in the majesty of the Titanic itself, in the overall scope of the movie, obviously, the innovations that James Cameron had with his visual effects, the entire set piece of the last half of the movie.
A very long movie, too. Obviously longer
Yeah.
than... I think it was longer than L.A. Confidential. L.A. Confidential was
it's
long.
It's longer by like 45 minutes.
Yeah. So that's interesting, too, that
Yeah.
it's such a long movie and
Yeah.
kept people's attention for that long.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting that both films were set not in current time periods, so they were not contemporary.
Right.
I think that was interesting because they kind of went up against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they had that in common.
So the Academy was feeling a little nostalgic,
Yeah,
I suppose.
I guess so.
Like, we don't want to deal with what's happening in today's times.
But, as opposed to L.A. Confidential versus in the 1950s, you might need to know a little bit about the 1950s, I think, to actually get into that story.
Sure.
I mean, it's explained, but it's really, as I said, very thought-provoking. And as I said, there's some history rooted in there from the 1950s. Whereas Titanic in 1912, I don't think you need to know a lot about the early 1900s because you have the very, exaggerated costumes and hats, and you get the sense of where you are. Obviously, no one's taking these luxury liners in 1997, to get to New York. It's not like, what a insane long journey.
Right.
You're taking a cruise ship, right? If you're not taking these to Titanic. So, obviously, don't take the Titanic. Don't do it.
Good advice.
But also, even though Titanic was set in 1912, and you didn't need to know much about that period to be invested in the movie, it was also a time where people were actually curious about this ship because I believe they found it in the 1980s, but it was still pretty relevant in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Especially, before this film was released. This is actually something that happened not too long ago, whereas 1950s, that was obviously a few decades ago from when that movie was released.
40
yeah,
years removed.
40 years removed. So I thought that was interesting. Maybe brought up its relevance a little bit more than L.A. Confidential, where that really was a nostalgic 1950s film. Mm-hmm. Whereas Titanic, a little bit more relevant to the actual time period that was released in.
Slightly, yeah.
Yeah. And
another thing of note is that there was a musical, Titanic, on Broadway.
Now, see, I didn't know about that.
In 1997.
What?
Which is kind of crazy that this all coincided at the same time. But yeah, Titanic, the musical, came out in 1997, and it won the Tony Award for Best Musical.
That literally sounds like the worst musical idea.
Well, it's no longer on the Broadway stage,
that's
so
good. That's
make
good.
of that what you will. But anyway, you're right. I think Titanic fever was kind of in the air.
Yeah.
And it was relevant. I mean, obviously, LA Confidential, people in Los Angeles know about the corruption within the police force, and in a way that is relevant to
of course.
A largely, Los Angeles-based voting base. Obviously they're going to understand this more than the rest of the country will.
I feel like Titanic was also leading into the disaster movies as well. Like, that's a huge thing. Obviously, now we have so many disaster movies. They're coming out, like, every month. Something crazy happens.
The world is going to end.
Yeah. I mean, this is also the year of, like, Jurassic Park, Lost World. So we're looking at some, like, destructive kind of sets, destructions of sets. I don't know. I feel like that really appeals to people. So I think Titanic had a little bit of everything for everyone.
Exactly.
And I don't think L.A. Confidential had that quality.
Yeah. And obviously Titanic became the #1 movie of all time.
Yeah.
And that didn't necessarily happen, like, by the time that the Academy was voting on Best Picture. It kind of happened, it was in theaters for, like, 8 months.
Right. I think Titanic was too insane to ignore the Oscars.
It's literally
whether it
too
did
big
good
to
or
fail.
not, it was just like the most insane movie. I mean, the research that went into this movie, the years that went into this movie, it just, and you have Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio, visually really appealing. And also, you know, they were good actors. They had amazing chemistry.
They do.
Something that you don't see a lot sometimes. Sometimes the actors don't have good chemistry together, and they had... I'm not saying that's not true in LA Confidential, but just the fact that it was rooted in this very Shakespearean romance.
Doomed romance.
Yes, a doomed romance. Tragic.
Star-crossed lovers.
Yeah, which, I don't know, I feel like people wanted to
that.
see back then. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this brings up an interesting question that somebody tweeted at me because I asked for questions for this episode. And this is from Al Robinson, who asked, with Kate Winslet landing an acting nomination, why do you think Leonardo DiCaprio did not? They fed off each other's performances, and Kate wouldn't have been as great without him. Do you have theories on why? Because I think I know very easily why.
Well, I think she was...
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think she was, you know... I think at the beginning she's a damsel in distress, but she clearly breaks out of that role very quickly. I think that might have been a surprise to audiences. Not only, don't forget, it was 1997. You have a very strong female role. I mean, she's pretty much the essence of the entire movie.
Yeah, she
from
is
beginning
the lead
to end. She's
more
the
than
lead.
he is.
She is the lead
Yeah.
because she's in more scenes than he is.
Yeah.
You know, she makes it from the beginning of the movie to the end. He does not. I'm very sad about
Spoiler.
that still. But spoiler, sorry. If you haven't seen Titanic, I don't even know what you're doing.
Yes.
But I mean, honestly, I think that her performance was beyond that time. I really do. I mean, I think she was a very strong, not only a strong character, but a strong actress.
Yeah, she
That's
is.
why I think.
Mean, she's Kate Winslet. She's a fantastic actress.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
So why do you think Leonardo DiCaprio did not?
I don't think he was the lead. I don't think he was part... I don't know. I think if they had to choose between having her to be nominated or him to be nominated with the limited spots that they have for the other movies, I think she easily got that spot.
Yeah. The overwhelming theory that a lot of people have with the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio was not nominated is it's called slap the stud syndrome.
Interesting.
Which means
Go on.
the Academy tends to not love younger male actors who are considered handsome. The Academy, especially in 1997, was overwhelmingly older men. And you'll notice over the years that they don't have a problem with younger actresses who happen to also be conventionally attractive.
Interesting.
Whereas male actors, there tends to be this feeling of like, hey, buddy, you know, like, you're on top of the world. You've got all these girls and everything. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's probably how they felt. Is that, like, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio became this heartthrob who, like, so many girls, millions of girls fell in love with.
Yeah, I you know what? I do agree with that because I feel like the Oscars isn't about the heartthrobs. I mean, he was like the tiger beat, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think that's what... I don't think that they thought that was Oscar worthy.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's kind of like
or there was this feeling like, oh, he's so young, you know, it's not really his time yet.
Right. I mean, she was young too. I think she's only a few years older than him.
That is true.
Yeah, and they were fairly well. I know he was in his TV show, right? He had a TV show, or he was in a TV show.
I think so.
Young Leo.
Yeah. And he was also nominated before for What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Oh, right. What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Which was when he was not a lot younger, but certainly more of a teen.
Yeah,
you know?
more of a teen, yeah.
And Kate Winslet was also nominated 2 years previously for Sense and Sensibility. And so they are both Oscar nominees, but I feel like in some way Kate Winslet was considered a little bit more serious, maybe, than
I think so
Leonardo
too.
DiCaprio. They're like, I don't know about this guy. Maybe he's just like a handsome leading man more than he is an actor.
Right.
So.
Right. And as I said, she's in more of the scene. She's the breakthrough.
Yeah.
I feel.
She's probably the person who you take more away from after watching the movie.
It's her story.
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally her story.
Yeah. So another question related to this slightly is from Andrew Carden, who says, did Titanic deserve its snub in Best Original Screenplay? If not, which nominees should it have replaced? So Titanic famously did not get nominated for its screenplay. Titanic is not well loved because of its writing, because of the way it's written. A lot of people have issues with the first half of the movie and how it's a little bit cliche, and a lot of it's like hitting the nail over the head with like the idea of, oh, this thing can't sink. you know, that sort of thing.
To be fair, though, that is historically accurate, actually. I mean, it is. They really did not think that this thing was going to sink. They didn't have enough lifeboats. It really was a dumb mistake that had catastrophic effects. I mean, results. I mean, it does sound really stupid, but also that's the point, though, too, is that watching this movie, you don't need to know that history. But if you do know that history, I feel like you'd understand where they were going with that story.
Yeah.
And as I said, James Cameron did a lot of research on this ship. I mean, he even got I heard he even, like, fixed the constellations during the end of the movie to match that time and where the stars would be. That's how crazy accurate he tried to make this film. There's definitely a few things that are not,
I just think some of the dialogue is a little cheesy, for some people.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit kind of like everyone who's not Leonardo DiCaprio or Kate Winslet is kind of just like two-dimensional stock characters.
Oh, completely. Oh, definitely. They're really just supporting the story. They're not really giving anything else to it.
Yeah. So I think it's fine that Titanic was not nominated for original screenplay.
Yeah.
Because it excelled a lot more in everything else.
Well, as I said, it's a feeling. It's not really the writing.
Exactly.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Here.
LA Confidential is a perfect
it's all about
adapted screenplay winner,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm fine with that. I would probably, if I was going to replace it, as Andrew Carden asks, I would probably, let's just look at the nominees here. We have Good Will Hunting, which is the winner. And the other nominees are As Good as It Gets, Boogie Nights, Deconstructing Harry, and The Full Monty. I would probably just replace Deconstructing Harry because that's written by Woody Allen, and he does not need another nomination.
Nah.
So just replace it with that. But at the same time, I don't know that it's necessarily worthy of screenplay.
I mean, it's a beautiful, it's a good story.
Oh yeah, and people get swept up in the story.
It's not like super original either because it's
that's
based
another
on
thing.
History.
Yeah.
Almost, I mean, a good portion, besides that romance with them, a lot of that is straight up taken from the actual sinking of Titanic.
Yes, of course.
It's emphasized, it's a little bit altered, but the idea of everything from the musicians on the deck to the couple that die in the bed, a lot of it is taken from history. Yeah. As I said, altered, not totally historically accurate, but it's not super original either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to kind of wrap up the why Titanic won, why LA Confidential lost part of it, I really do think it just comes down to Titanic being so undeniable of a movie that I think at that time especially, they were really into the idea of rewarding these big, epic movies that, have action in some places, have romance in some places. Like Titanic, in many ways, is like a hearkening back to classic movies of like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, kind of the big, epic kinds of things. And so I think they were just... like when you look at Best Picture, I think what a lot of people see is like this was the most epic, daring, hardest film to make, and therefore it's worthy of this prize, essentially.
Also the special effects, I mean,
which were very innovative.
It was very innovative
and still hold up.
Yeah, for sure.
21 years
it's not
later.
Like, exactly. It's not like you're watching now and you're like, wow, it's really cheesy.
Yeah, like, oh god, it's so dated.
No,
it's like it works.
Yeah,
still.
I mean, everything he did to make it look as realistic as possible is just incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, even just the stars, like, in the sky, like, nothing was done, like...
out of place. Nothing was out of place.
Yeah, nothing was...
everything had a reason.
Everything had a reason, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he recreated the rooms
on
the ship. He recreated the ship.
Exactly.
And they still
that
I
alone,
think that sets apart LA Confidential from Titanic, is that the fact that people are still interested in this movie. They still watch it. People watch it for the first time. Still, I mean, generations have grown up with this. They released it in 3D.
Yeah.
Right? They spent the money to release it in 3D, and it was actually, I mean, I saw it because, let's be honest, Titanic.
If it hasn't already been clear from this, 20 minutes, you're a big Titanic fan.
I am a big Titanic fan.
Yeah.
Not just the movie either. I'm fascinated with the ship. I just loved the whole concept of it. Obviously, the romance is not real, but Jack,
it
forever.
Is to you.
It's real to me. No, I mean, I just think it's interesting that people are still interested in Titanic. I mean, they have the Titanic exhibit in Florida. Mm-hmm. They have Titanic exhibits, the traveling exhibits from the actual ship. And people look and they're like, wow, that was in the movie. That looks like something in the movie.
Yeah.
So people are learning the history through the movie, or learning the movie through the history. Mm-hmm. I don't think LA Confidential has that impact.
Culturally speaking, there's no comparison.
Right.
Obviously.
Can we just real quick hit on to the fact that Celine Dion's song is the most popular 90s song. Yeah. And it's still played on the radio.
Yep.
And it was just so iconic, and it's through the entire movie.
Yeah, the instrumental.
And then you hear, obviously her song at the end in the credits. I think that was a big impact on Titanic.
I think
Best
the music,
Picture.
James Horner's music, is 100% what sold that movie.
Absolutely.
For a lot of people. Yeah. Because it really just accentuates all of the emotional themes, the doomed romance.
Mm-hmm. And she sang it at the 1997 Oscars.
Yeah.
And it was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole room was totally silent.
Yeah.
I YouTubed this.
Yeah.
To see what it was like. And I think that was her first time singing that song live.
Yes. And,
I mean, you couldn't even tell. It was insane.
Yeah.
I think that also sold it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, just Celine Dion alone.
Right?
She sold the movie.
Yeah. So I think ultimately LA Confidential was probably a alternative for Titanic, for people who are like, Titanic is so overrated. I'm so tired of hearing the song, all this stuff, because there's a lot of critics of Titanic, to be fair.
I mean, Titanic was a very popular kind of, I don't know, teeny bopper movie. Yeah. It really was. It appealed more to younger kids than LA Confidential did.
Obviously,
I think if Titanic hadn't been released and it hadn't been, released in the time frame that it was, so it made the Oscars, I think LA Confidential would have won.
I agree with that, actually. Yeah. And I think that's what's so fascinating about talking about movies that did not win Best Picture but came very close,
right.
Is the idea of, if this one movie had not come out, do we think this other really great movie could have been a Best Picture winner? And I think in this case, that is absolutely true. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about a few other nominees for Best Picture that year, because as you mentioned, these two are very period pieces, very attached to the idea of recreating the past and everything. But the other nominees were not, certainly.
Yeah, I think that's interesting.
Because we have As Good as It Gets, which is this romantic sort of movie by James L. Brooks, who did Terms of Endearment and Broadcast News. I think As Good as It Gets is not held up to that kind of regard that Terms of Endearment or Broadcast News are. It did make a lot of money.
News.
Yeah.
Yes. Very popular movie.
But As Good as It Gets did make a lot of money, for a romantic comedy, which is a genre that doesn't often make that much money. It made over $150 million in 1997, and if you adjust that for inflation for today's money, that would be almost $300 million.
Good Lord.
Which is unheard of for a movie like this. But As Good as It Gets, it's funny enough, I just watched it for the first time this week. Because it's just one of those movies that people kind of recommend, especially in the Oscar world, because obviously Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt both win Oscars in lead actor and lead actress. So, did you have any thoughts on As Good as It Gets?
I haven't seen it in a while, and be honest with you, but I mean, yeah, I was just surprised it was even romantic comedies usually are not nominated for Oscars.
It's true. Yeah.
But I think that was the year of romance.
Clearly, we were into that as well.
We were into romance and being swept off our feet and having such a contrast. You know, I mean, I don't know. I think there's definitely kind of a theme going on there that year.
Yeah. I think the fact that we have a romance between Jack Nicholson and Helen Hunt is a little bit weird.
Kind of.
Maybe even by then, like those standards, let alone now, because there's a 30-year difference between them.
But there's also that contrast that you see with not even age-wise, just personality-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a similar theme in Titanic.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Opposites attract. Obviously, that's what we were into in 1997.
Yes. And that actually is going to hold true for the next movie I'm going to talk about. But to talk about As Good as It Gets, it was a huge, huge hit. Jack Nicholson won his 3rd Oscar for it. Not many actors have won 3 Oscars. So I think it's a solid performance from him. I think sometimes Jack Nicholson kind of falls back on his personality.
Yeah.
Rather than giving a totally,
different,
deeply felt, totally, unrecognizable kind of performance.
Well, it's like Danny DeVito.
A little bit.
A little bit.
But he's decent in it. I think Helen Hunt is also decent in it. I think it's like it's a single mom waitress role who's struggling to have healthcare for her child, and it's a strong, like, compelling arc. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Helen Hunt is necessarily, like, great as far as, like, what she brings to the role is anything that another actress couldn't have. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, and I feel bad for saying that because I do really like Helen Hunt and her in this movie. But I got a surprising amount of questions about As Good as It Gets when I asked for questions here. I got like 3 or 4 questions about it, but let's just run through these really quickly.
Okay.
Mark Lamb said, As Good as It Gets seems to have disappeared from any film consciousness. The Oscars didn't do anything for Helen Hunt's career, and Nicholson is good as usual, but Oscar-worthy? Are there any other performances that make us think, what were they thinking?
Like, in 1997 or in general?
I think in 1997.
Okay.
But as far as...
I feel like all Oscars have that one performance where you're like, what? Why? Why that movie? Why that actor? Yeah. I don't know. I feel like this is probably just that movie. But also it did really well, and maybe that was their more popular movie in there? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, you got Titanic,
sure.
But Titanic obviously had a lot more than this movie did, and was not a comedy. I don't know. I think that's surprising to today's standards that a romantic comedy was even nominated.
A little bit. Like, we very rarely get that these days. I think the last time, I could be wrong about this, but I think the last time was Silver Linings Playbook, which was 2012.
Even that was a little more complicated.
Yeah,
a little bit more
dramatic.
Rooted and dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some drama.
That was also
As Good
based
as it
on a
gets,
book, too.
But yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think they are both decent performances, but neither of them would make any top 10 list for me, or even top 20 list, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, they were just kind of there. I don't know. I'm not like a huge fan of that movie. I saw it like once, a very long time ago. My mom loves that movie. There's a dog in there, so maybe that's
the dog
an
helps.
Attraction. The dog helps.
The dog is always good.
So
yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know who that appeals to. Like, is there a certain age range, or?
I think an older kind of baby boomer crowd would probably take to As Good as It Gets.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit dated now because we talked a lot about how 3 Billboards was a movie that you do not like 3 Billboards. I know that.
I hate 3 Billboards.
Well, that is a movie that
That's one that I was like, why? Why?
What were they thinking?
What were they thinking?
Yeah, that's a movie where we have a very clear racist cop who many people believe by the end of that movie is unfairly redeemed by the end.
Absolutely.
That is exactly what happens in As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson, because he is like a misanthrope. He's racist. Not only is he racist, but he is sexist and he is homophobic.
However, that was in 1997. The fact that billboards was still trying that.
That's very...
But that's an actor that should not have been nominated. Sam Rockwell. I don't understand at all what they were thinking. There you go. I don't know what they were thinking.
Boom.
That's my number one right there.
I agree.
It's not impressed.
In 2017, I agree that is less acceptable.
I don't think Good as It Gets would make it today at all. However, it was 1997, so
I agree. Times were very different.
Times were very different then, and I don't think it holds up. But
it does not hold. It's
back then. I guess it was okay.
Of all the movies in the 97 race, I think As Good as It Gets holds up the least.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Guillermo Friel said, "Hot take: Helen Hunt deserved the Oscar." Well, that's fair. That's fair. And also, Rayon Haykal said, "Seems unbelievable that Helen Hunt won over Judi Dench for Mrs. Brown. The rest of their careers show who clearly deserved to win. First of all, I don't love that logic. I don't think that just because someone's career was better after the fact necessarily means that they shouldn't have won an Oscar.
No, I don't think so
either.
Right. But I mean, it's...
Because Kim Basinger, let's be honest, Kim Basinger is not in... First of all, isn't in that many movies. No. She was just in 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
So this is the point where she is at in her career. No offense to her.
Yeah.
But
no, I still thought she was really great in LA Confidential. But I don't think it defines a career so much as, I mean, you can't really... How would you know at that time what they were going to be doing anyways?
Yeah. I mean, we can say now that, like... Looking back 20 years ago, did she deserve it?
I don't think Oscars necessarily help a career, actually.
Yeah, and
sometimes they don't help at all.
A lot of Best Actress winners, there was like this curse in like the 2000s
that they all got divorced.
Halle Berry,
they literally all got divorced.
Yeah,
it's a power thing too.
A little bit.
Yeah,
well,
it gives
actually,
them power.
A lot of it, I imagine.
A lot of no, I'm sure it is.
Yeah,
it's a power thing.
Yep. Yeah, so that's that on that.
Okay.
Good Will Hunting. So let's talk Good Will Hunting. Very, very Boston movie.
Very Boston.
We are from New England. We're from New England, so we have more.
No, was that released in the fall?
Probably.
Because it's literally like the epitome of New England fall.
It really is.
It's like, look at the fall.
Yeah. So Good Will Hunting, this is a movie that obviously Matt Damon and Ben Affleck wrote. And this is a movie that they really became names in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Not only for their screenwriting, which they didn't necessarily do after this movie, but for their public personas in Hollywood. Everyone basically fell in love with these guys. They were like the new Brat Pack kind of thing, you know?
And now we sigh.
Nowadays, I think that is that mode of like bro-y stuff, Boys Club, exactly, is not as much in fashion.
This 2018, yeah. It's definitely not a thing right now. It's very much not really acceptable right now. But back then it was definitely a boys club kind of deal. Mm-hmm. I think that movie definitely portrays it. There's lots of male leads, so
yes. But we also have the one female Minnie Driver.
Right.
Who, by the way, I must say, I really love Minnie Driver in Good Will Hunting.
I mean, I love her in general.
Yeah, absolutely. But she takes just what could have been a standard girlfriend role and really, I think, does a lot with it. She brings a lot of personality to the role.
Right.
So.
Well, that's what you said, putting anyone in a role, that's this... She made it hers.
She made it her own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stand out.
And it's the kind of thing where, unlike Helen Hunt,
exactly,
I think I couldn't picture someone else in this role.
Right.
So. And
that's what makes it iconic. That's what makes any role iconic is you can't imagine someone else being in that role.
Right.
Yeah.
So Good Will Hunting, watching it now is even more emotional. than it was then.
Oh, Robin
because of the passing of Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And that,
yeah.
and even, but not only that, but the role he plays in the movie is clearly more dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking more profoundly about life.
And may I just add, this was the year of Flubber as well. So, the biggest contrast ever.
He's got range. What can you say?
Like, same year, people.
Yeah.
Same year.
That actually happened.
That really happened.
Yeah.
Flubber. That creepy green thing.
Yeah.
That was this year.
Yeah. But honestly, I'd love him in this role in this movie as kind of this therapist for Matt Damon's character, Will Hunting. Hint, hint, that's the name of the film. Good Will Hunting. Very clever.
Oh, so clever. That's always bugs me, but whatever.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit.
But yeah, I'm so glad that he won an Oscar for this movie. And I miss him dearly.
I know. He was such a good actor. There's really no one else like him. I mean, he had his own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have to say, I usually don't love Matt Damon as an actor.
I never like Matt Damon as an actor. Super honest.
Yeah. But in this movie, I still think he's very good. I think this is probably his best role.
Oh, I would agree. Yeah. Definitely his best role, for sure. Yeah. I mean, he got the most recognition and kind of burst his career.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting about this year is that there are a lot of people that we know now in Hollywood that we didn't necessarily know before this.
Yeah,
I mean, we have
that's true.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet. These are people who
Russell Crowe.
A certain amount of people knew Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet before, but after Titanic, they were huge names.
Right.
So we have Matt Damon, Ben Affleck.
I think it's interesting too because a lot of movies now use actors that people know. There's rarely movies that have an entire cast of unknown actors or very little known actors. So this year, kind of, I feel like pushed some limits, kind of surprised people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a very defining kind of year, I think, for Hollywood.
For sure.
I think they really made a lot of stars.
Yeah.
In this year.
Definitely.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And the other movie that was nominated was The Full Monty.
I did not see this movie. It's the only one I didn't see.
I think it's probably the least seen of all of them. It is about a group of British steel workers who lose their jobs, and they decide to make kind of a Chippendales-esque troupe.
Oh, okay. All right. I have heard of this. Yes. Yeah.
And they're obviously like older men and they're not necessarily in shape, so there's like a comedic aspect to everything.
Another comedy.
Yeah, another comedy.
Comedy seemed to be the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But The Full Monty, I feel like we get one of these kinds of movies once in a while where it's like a movie that just comes out of freaking nowhere and just becomes like this surprise sleeper hit, that sort of thing. And it's the kind of movie that I think people really rallied behind as like this underdog sort of thing. Like, we really like this cute little British movie. But then like looking back on it, it's like, I mean, is it worthy of Best Picture? Or did we just like have fun at the movies that one time?
I mean, you can it feels like the same kind of vibe as Good as It Gets. Like,
yeah, a little bit.
Why? But maybe that was kind of the argument too. Like, all right, well, we got As Good as It Gets, so might as well add this one on too. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, because you got Good Will Hunting, which is variety. A drama, and you have Titanic, which is a drama, and you have LA Confidential, which is primarily a drama.
Yeah.
So maybe to add a little bit of lightness in there.
Yeah.
So it's not.
We can't all be dour.
I mean, rarely is every Oscar nominee movie
a heavy drama,
a heavy dark drama. You always have something to lighten it up
in
there. Yeah. But was this a good pick? I don't know. I haven't seen it. It sounds like an interesting concept.
It's like it's very British style humor.
British. Okay, so maybe that's why it was a kind of unknown.
Yeah, and it became kind of a sleeper hit in the United States because it's like, oh, these older British actors being cheeky.
Well, something different, maybe
something very different.
Yeah, something very different.
It's refreshing.
Something not your standard American comedy.
Exactly. Do you want to move on to other movies from 1997
Yes.
to talk about? Okay, so this is our Shoulda Been a Contender segment. And these are movies that were either Best Picture nominated or other movies that were Oscar nominated that year or movies completely ignored by the Academy. So, did you have one or two you wanted to talk about here?
Well, Anastasia. So
Anastasia.
that got a best song, right? Best
Song and I think score as well.
and score.
Yeah.
I loved that movie. I remember watching it as a kid. I actually saw it in the theaters when I was a kid. I think everyone thought it was a Disney movie, but it was not. It's Fox
Yeah.
Animation, which is now Disney, ironically enough.
Right.
But it was just such a good story. Again, rooted in history. Definitely not historically accurate at all. Yeah, but it does have a historical element to it. I mean, there really was a Russian named Anastasia.
Right.
A Russian princess
Very
named Anastasia.
loosely, yeah.
Very
Right.
loose with the Romanovs. But,
Sure.
I mean, it's such a beautiful movie. Such a nice story.
Mm-hmm.
The music was just stunning. I mean, it's one of those movies that is still watched today. Kids still watch it, and it's a Broadway musical now, which is amazing. Yeah, I actually saw this really cool thing on YouTube where it was the 20th anniversary of Anastasia, and they had the movie playing in the background as the Broadway actress was singing in front of it, and it was so
That's awesome.
nostalgic.
Yeah.
So I feel like watching the musical is like super nostalgic for people too.
Yeah.
I feel like anything that you can bring back from the dead 20 years later is a good movie. Is a good piece of cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I loved Anastasia. I love it to this day. I think I had like the Barbie dolls.
Wow.
I know. Well, it's, I mean, I know obviously it's animated, but the costumes, the animation
that's part of it.
was stunning.
Sure. Yeah.
And the story, and it was a little scary for kids. You had that creepy guy, but you also had the comedy too in there. And
Yeah.
I mean, I love the song. What was the song that was nominated?
Journey to the Past.
Journey to the Past. Yeah, I mean that's a beautiful song,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the hits of the Broadway musical currently. I don't know if it's still on Broadway, but it was last year. So
Yeah.
and Hercules.
Hercules.
Hercules was that year too.
I love Hercules.
I love Hercules too.
That's the one that I was obsessed with in 1997.
I think it works really well that both of those were released in 1997.
Yeah.
Because you have really strong female characters.
I love Meg.
I love Meg. She's the best.
Very refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, Anastasia is kind of a really sarcastic
Yeah.
character, and you have Meg too. It's almost, they're animated, but they're like so real. Like they really are like multi-dimensional.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big contrast between what was released before that, Disney-wise, animated wise, with you got the Disney princesses, and Meg is
Exactly.
not a Disney princess.
Yeah.
She is very much the opposite
Right.
of what a standard Disney princess is.
And that's what happened near the mid to late 90s where we had
Yeah.
like Pocahontas
Yeah.
isn't really a princess.
Mulan.
Mulan is not a princess.
No, she's not a princess.
You know.
You didn't have those princessy vibes.
Right.
It was a little bit more raw.
Exactly.
And I liked that. Yeah, Hercules was great. The music,
Yeah.
everything about it.
I feel like it's still kind of underrated as a
Yeah,
movie.
I think so
It's not
too.
thought of as like a big classic on the level of like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast.
No.
Which, I mean, I think those movies are better than Hercules.
Well,
but
yeah, definitely. They're more popular too.
Yeah,
Hercules
that's what I'm
is
saying.
a little bit underrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has a ton of music in it.
The music in Hercules is like, I was obsessed with that as a child.
Me too.
The muses, oh my god.
Oh, the best.
Yes.
Yeah. As I said, you have that historical element.
Yeah, I know.
No, really,
That
like
is
it's
funny.
really
Yeah.
interesting. 1997,
Mm-hmm.
so much like random history.
Yeah.
Because there really was a mythological story about Hercules.
Yeah.
I mean, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Weird theme.
And
I don't know.
after watching Hercules, I became really obsessed with like Greek mythology and everything.
Yeah.
And I got like books on it and stuff.
Like me and Titanic.
Exactly. But this actually dovetails a little bit into another question
Okay.
from Jeffrey Kerr, who said, "What are your thoughts on the best original song lineup that year? Even though My Heart Will Go On was pretty much unbeatable, the category itself still had a pretty great slate of nominees," which I very much agree with.
Yeah.
I do think My Heart Will Go On deserved to win.
Oh, absolutely.
It's iconic.
Yeah.
And even though it was overplayed like crazy for a lot of people, I think it still is a song that really lends itself and just really brings out that emotion from the movie, and that's what I would want in a best original song.
It was also played on the radio, which I think is really interesting because usually Oscar-nominated songs are not played on the radio.
Yeah.
They're just not. They're just part of the movie, and that's pretty much it, or they're part of the soundtrack.
Yeah.
But My Heart Will Go On, it's still played on the radio.
Yeah.
And the oldies station, but I think that's interesting. That it got that far, that much popularity.
Yeah.
So I think it was pretty much, a shoe-in to win.
Right. But as far as the other nominees, we have Go the Distance from Hercules, which I love. Ooh. Journey to the Past from Anastasia, also good. How Do I Live from Con Air.
Oh,
which also was a big hit.
Yeah.
And then Miss Misery from Good Will Hunting. All great songs. Mm-hmm. But again, I really just... My heart is with My Heart Will Go On.
Okay, if Titanic was not a thing, what song do you think would win?
What do I think would win, or what do you think should win? Because there is a difference.
Should win. Let's do should win first.
Okay. I would actually go with Miss Misery from Good Will Hunting because I like Elliott Smith. And it's probably the alternative choice. It's like the hipstery choice. But
okay, now would win.
Would win?
Yeah.
Probably How Do I Live.
Interesting.
What do you think? Do you think one of the animated ones would have won?
I mean, I love them, but no. I mean, those kind of rarely win.
In the 90s, they did win a lot, actually.
They did?
Yeah, like Lion King and Beauty and the Beast.
That's true.
Which we talked about already.
Those were more popular Disney movies, too.
Yeah, that's the
thing. And a little bit more bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like the two animated ones probably would have split the vote.
Yeah.
Anyway, so did you have another movie? I think you just Chasing Amy, right?
Oh yeah, Chasing Amy. Yeah. I love that movie. It was the year of Ben Affleck. He was in this movie. He is actually a lead in this movie. Really interesting. I watched it a few years ago in college. I just happened to find it on Netflix, and I knew nothing about it. Yeah, it was. So it's about this. So Ben Affleck is like obsessed with this girl, Amy. So basically, Amy is like a metaphor for the girl that gets away.
Yeah.
That's basically kind of the essence of the movie. It was very interesting. I don't really know how else to describe it. Like, definitely not a movie that you'd expect at that time period. I don't know. So she's I don't know if she's bisexual or a lesbian. I'm not really sure what they were trying to go for there, but she also likes Ben Affleck, so I don't know. Maybe that was controversial at the time. I was 6 years old. I have no idea. In 1997. I did not watch this when I was 6 years old. I watched it a few years ago in college.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the acting in that movie the story was, I don't know. It was just an interesting movie. I don't really know how to describe it, to be honest. It was something I feel like you wouldn't expect because also, like, Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion was this year as well.
Hey.
And I love that movie. That was with Lisa Kudrow, who was in Friends at the time. So that was a very campy kind of movie. Mm-hmm. Ditzy blondes, go to their high school reunion. They invented the Post-it note. No, they didn't. I loved that movie. That was a good movie. And then My Best Friend's Wedding with
Julia Roberts.
Yep.
Who was like a box office monster
at
the time.
Yeah.
Just
and
her
Cameron
name alone.
Diaz, baby Cameron Diaz. Sure. Very young in that movie. Mm-hmm. A very different role from what Cameron Diaz usually plays, actually.
Yeah.
So that's actually probably like her most diverse role was... She's like the not stuck up, but the very like dainty, conservative blonde.
Right. Usually she's more like...
Usually she's a little
wacky.
more wild. Yeah, exactly. So I thought that... Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a good year for movies.
It was a really crazy, like, diverse year of film.
I think what stands out the most is the female leads. I feel like the female leads were really powerful that year.
Yeah.
Which,
not only in live action, but animated.
and like they're kind of lacking today. So I feel like that's interesting in 1997.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is certainly a pattern that people have picked up on, is the idea that although there are still great roles for women as leading characters, they're just not quite the same as they were in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s.
How interesting. Yeah, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should go back to the past,
We
maybe
should journey to the past.
Journey to
truly.
the past and go the distance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, I think that is because you have Kim Basinger, and she was a very powerful role. Kate Winslet was a very powerful role. I mean, you have these female roles that like pretty much steal the show from the men, and yet you don't have that today.
Not as much.
Not as much.
Yeah.
Not as much.
Well, some of the movies I want to talk about.
Although not as much diversity in 1997.
That is also true. A lot,
just saying.
A very, very white bread kind of.
Very white, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but other movies that I wanted to mention are Boogie Nights, which is kind of the first big break for the director Paul Thomas Anderson, starring an all-star cast including Mark Wahlberg, Julianne Moore, Burt Reynolds, Marky Mark, kind of in the prime of Marky Mark era.
Yeah.
97.
Yeah. Yep.
It's obviously, for those who haven't seen it, it is about the pornography scene in the 1970s. And it's... But
again,
it's not...
Another era?
Yeah, exactly. But it's not necessarily, like, trashy or, like, tawdry in any way. It kind of... Even though it is very funny and kind of irreverent, it's also kind of takes itself seriously in kind of suggesting, like, these are people who... For pornography, that's a business for them, and like it's a kind of a last resort for some people. And I think it really, especially for people like Mark Wahlberg and Julianne Moore in the movie, it kind of suggests like they have had to work very hard all of their lives, and this is kind of what they have to resort to. I just think those are interesting themes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I love Jackie Brown, Quentin Tarantino.
Tarantino.
Pam Grier is another great female lead in that. There's a few very, very sad movies that I wanted to mention.
No.
We talked a lot about kind of funnier movies.
Yeah.
But there are some sads here too. Including The Ice Storm, which is about...
It just sounds sad.
Yes. Directed by Ang Lee. And that is kind of about suburban angst in the 1970s. Which...
Again, the 1970s.
What
is up?
I know. We were into it.
We were into it, yeah.
And
Journey to the past. Sorry, go on.
One other one I wanted to mention before we move on is just The Sweet Hereafter, which was nominated for director and screenplay, but not Best Picture, oddly enough. That is a movie that I watched in high school because my film studies teacher showed it to us. And I don't think that he should have. Because this is a movie about children who are killed in a school bus accident.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
And the ramifications of that and how the community how the town tries to, like, overcome this, and they, go through lawsuits and everything, and it's a lot about grief.
It's a real
and
opera.
Emotion. Yeah. But, like, showing this to high schoolers who then have to, like, get on a bus in a half hour, it's, like, not great. Just saying. But still very powerful.
Yeah, it's awkward.
Again, I don't know.
Did you walk home that day?
I couldn't. I didn't live that close. But... yeah, I think I was like, can I be picked up? Anyway, so those are the movies that I wanted to mention. And if you don't have anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we can move on to our final segment. And
Woohoo!
when we come back, we will be talking about whether we think Titanic rightfully won Best Picture or if LA Confidential should have taken it.
Thank you. Well, and finally, it all comes down to this. The Best Picture. And the nominees are As Good as It Gets, James L. Brooks, Bridget Johnson, Christy Zia, the producers. The Full Monty, Roberto Pasolini, producer. Good Will Hunting. Lawrence Bender, producer. L.A. Confidential. Alan Milson, Kristen, Curtis Hanson, and Michael Nathanson, producers. Titanic, James Cameron and John Landau, producers. And the Oscar goes to Titanic.
This is James Cameron's third Academy Award of the evening, and the first for John Landau.
And we're back.
Hi.
Oh boy. So, now, for our final segment, we should talk about whether we think Titanic rightfully won Best Picture or if LA Confidential should have taken it. Ashley Kus, your verdict.
I love Titanic. But in my non-biased opinion, no, I think Titanic rightfully won. I mean, there is no film to date as grand and as expensive as Titanic. I don't know, it seemed like just an insane concept to recreate the
Take
ship
a risk
that
on.
sunk,
Yeah.
100 years ago. So I just think there's really nothing else that could have taken that spot.
Yeah, it was too powerful.
It was way too powerful between the acting and the storylines and the visual effects and the song that blew everyone away. It was just the year of Titanic. I mean, you say 1997, you literally think of Titanic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think for me, I really love, this is yet another case where I really love both of these movies that I'm talking about, and it's really hard to make a decision between the two of them because they're doing two very different things. Once again, it's like apples and oranges here, where it's like, I love the grandeur and sweep and romance of Titanic, and I admire James Cameron for even risking all of this and having it actually be a great movie on top of that is just insane. But I also recognize there are some weaknesses in the first half of the movie that don't live up to the second half, which is just like flawless.
I mean, the first half is definitely slow.
Yeah.
It's a slow beginning.
Yeah. And it's just slightly
like, where's
disjointed.
this going?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's why they had, I mean, interesting you say it's slightly disjointed because this movie was actually released on 2 separate VHSs.
Yeah, exactly.
If you had to have it in 2 VHSs, and the way it was, they
Which
had to
I had.
split. Yeah, so did I.
Yeah.
And you watched one, and you almost didn't, I mean, you watched the next one, but if you watched the first one, it's pretty much a story in itself. And a very slow story in that.
Yeah.
Until you get to the actual climax of the movie, and that's the second half.
Right.
So I think it was literally split in 2.
Yeah, exactly.
Which no movie is done.
Yeah.
There's no movie that's split in 2
Quite like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I recognize on the other side, LA Confidential is, to me, more engaging on that intellectual level, and it's probably deeper than Titanic is ultimately.
Oh, for sure.
It speaks to a lot of different social issues.
Mm-hmm. It dives deeper into the stories.
Exactly.
It shows you more. Well, actually, no. It shows you more than it tells you.
Exactly.
There's a lot of mystery.
Yeah.
In LA
exactly.
Confidential that I feel like a lot of people maybe didn't get at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, it
and
depends when it was released, too.
That's going to happen when it's like, if you compare Titanic and LA Confidential, one is clearly more geared towards a wide audience.
Yes,
like,
for a
people
blockbuster
from
hit.
8 years old to 85 are going to
right.
recognize the value in Titanic.
Right.
You sit a child in front of LA Confidential and they'll be like, I'm confused and I hate this. So it really had that kind of broad appeal that you could have set anyone down in front of it and they'd be like, that is a great movie. Whereas with LA Confidential, I think you just need to work a little more to appreciate it.
And you don't watch it over again to watch it over again. You watch it over again and you see things
Like
you
little
didn't
clues.
see before.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's interesting because normally if you watch Titanic over again, first of all, you have to have a whole day planned out. It's like a 2.5-hour movie. I think that...
Well, they're both long.
Now, they're both long. And I think the only reason that Titanic did very well is because it's visually stunning.
Yeah.
And you get that feeling because it's a very long movie.
Yeah.
And
it is
I
an
think
experience.
it's surprising that people actually stuck around for that whole movie.
Yeah.
That people didn't
went
think that it
back
was
to the
too
movies.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah, people went back and saw this movie multiple times. When
This
it was
like
in theaters.
200-minute movie.
I don't think we're fully grasping how freaking long this movie is.
Yeah.
And today we have even little attention span that we did in 1997.
Right.
Like it's even smaller than it was then, and yet we still watch this movie.
Yeah.
LA Confidential, I think it actually moves faster than Titanic does.
Yeah, it does.
I think while it does take its time to tell the story, I think it moves things along in a way that is engaging.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's always engaging.
Mm-hmm.
There's not one moment you can go to the bathroom and come back and be like, oh, I know what's going on. You actually don't.
Right.
Because, I mean, you really have to pay attention. And with Titanic, I feel like you could doze off a little bit.
And be totally
and
fine.
Be totally fine. The ship has
Like,
not
does
sunk
the
yet.
ship sink yet? Oh, okay. I'll go to the bathroom.
It's Titanic, as you said, it's a full experience.
It is.
Because
More than a movie. It is like
LA
an event.
Confidential, you're in the event that builds the movie happens right away.
Right.
It takes a freaking hour for that ship to actually start sinking.
Yeah.
Not just sink, but start sinking.
Yeah, everything's going fine in the first hour.
Yeah.
It's like we're just hanging
whole
out with these people on a boat.
Yeah. I mean, it's like an entire... A day on this boat before it starts to sink. Mm-hmm. And that's surprising to me that just that concept alone kept people watching it.
Well, yeah. I think it's a lot of factors, including the romance. People really invest in that.
You also have a really steamy
music.
sex scene.
That is
Let's
true.
just get that out of the way real
Lots of
quick
fun
because
sex.
lots of fun sex. That scene is like insanely iconic. Mm-hmm. It's been mocked.
Yeah.
it's been it's been criticized. That's what makes the movie actually now this is interesting too. You can actually stop the movie at that point, not see that for the children, which my parents did, and then watch it again and be totally fine.
Right,
LA Confidential is very violent. I don't think children can watch that movie at all. They
wouldn't get anything out of it.
They wouldn't
like
get
I
anything
said.
out of it.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Yeah. So I think LA Confidential is pretty much targeted towards an older audience.
Yeah.
Whereas
Mature.
Titanic, mature. Whereas Titanic, I feel like anyone can watch that truly.
Exactly.
And be okay.
Yeah. And at that time, I think the Academy was into that idea of a movie that can have that kind of a broad range.
Yes.
Whereas nowadays, I don't know if that's true anymore.
Well, I don't know if a brand new movie that's 2.5 hours long would stand up to today.
Yeah.
Even as something as grand as Titanic, our attention spans are just not there, people. They're just not.
Yeah, even for sophisticated Academy members.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta set aside a whole night to watch Titanic.
Again, it's an event, so yeah.
It's an event.
Yeah, so I think we both agree Titanic rightfully won.
Yeah.
But I think if Titanic weren't there, LA Confidential would have been a great Best Picture winner.
If Titanic wasn't there, it would have... I feel like the Oscars would have been so much different.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Titanic really defined that year for the Oscars.
It was the year of Titanic.
It was the year of Titanic. I mean... Yeah, it launched. It even further launched the careers of Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. You also had Kathy Bates in there too.
That's true.
Just want to point
People
that
forget
out
that.
real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kathy Bates.
Yeah.
She was The unsinkable Molly Brown.
That's right.
Which is a true thing, by the way. I did a report on that in 5th grade.
Oh my
The
god.
unsinkable Molly Brown.
Wow.
I'm sorry, I'm obsessed. Totally obsessed.
Okay, well, before we end the show, I wanted to do a little PS because there was a big Academy announcement.
Speaking of the
This
Oscars.
very week, I'm recording this on Friday, just a few days ago, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences announced that they have 3 new things that they're going to do moving forward at the Oscars. And a lot of people are mad.
Speaking of attention spans.
Exactly. Attention spans.
Yes.
Okay, so there are 3 things here that need to be talked about. The first thing isn't a huge deal compared to the other 2, but in some ways it is significant. First of all, they said that they're going to move up the Oscars from its traditional late February / early March aired times to February 9th. So presumably moving forward, they're going to be having the Oscars in early February. Why did they do this? I'm not entirely sure.
I feel like that disqualifies a few movies.
Well, the thing is, though, that people have been talking about is a lot of Oscar movies come out in December. And by moving up the ceremony to early February, I think it really shortchanges some people and who actually want to make an active effort to watch some of the Best Picture nominees. It gives them less of an opportunity to do so before the Oscars.
Like me.
Right, like
I
you.
cram it all in 1 week.
Yeah, that's what you did, I think, this past time.
Yeah,
right?
I try to make an effort to watch all the Oscar-nominated films.
Best Picture.
For
Yeah.
Best Picture.
Yeah.
I think I even went beyond that this year. I think I watched a few that were not nominated for Best Picture.
Wow.
But I know I really went the full scale this year. But
Yeah.
I think it definitely takes out some really good options for people.
Yeah.
I feel like people aren't able to watch those movies. And also, I mean, maybe it takes out a few options. I don't know. I feel like moving it up is kind of rushing things.
Yeah. It kind of screws up a lot of schedules as well.
Yeah.
That film
Yeah.
studios had to, release them.
True. Yeah. If you
And the
release
thing
dates,
is,
yep.
a lot of these smaller studios rely on the Oscars to create publicity for their movie.
And set their releases, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And by moving it up, I feel like it gives less opportunity for people to go out there and see the movies before the ceremony because it's
And you're
so
going to
much...
have a mad rush to release these movies in the fall.
Yeah.
And it's literally going to be all these movies one after the other.
Yeah, and then it's going to be it kind of shortchanges things because you can only see so many movies in the theater that are out at the same time before
Right.
you go broke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's just kind of an instance. There seems to be a theme going on here of just rushing things and
Yeah.
getting things done, which I'm really not sure why that's a thing.
Yeah, so let's move on to the bigger ones.
Speaking of
quickly.
rushing.
Yeah. The other one is that they're going to make this a 3-hour telecast. Come in at a tight 3 hours as opposed to the typical 3.5 to 4 hours for the Oscar telecast. And so by doing that, they said they are going to not do some of the categories live on the telecast. They are going to present some of these categories during commercial breaks.
Yeah, this is going to be a big issue.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now that people are not going to be happy
Yeah.
that some of these... I mean, the fact that you're taking a show that's about awards and taking away the award portion of it is weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like watching the Super Bowl and taking away some of the football portion of it and just doing that during commercial breaks.
Right.
Having the game just play as normal and not showing people who are watching it on the TV who obviously can't afford to go to the Super Bowl. Like, most people can't afford to go to the Oscars.
Right.
So, gotta be invited to the Oscars. I think that takes away opportunities for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And especially since we're
It
looking...
sends a weird message.
It sends a weird message that we don't really care about these categories, showing them to the public.
Right.
It's almost like a hidden thing, a secret. Which
We got to get it out of
really
the way.
strange.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're missing the acceptance speeches. I feel like this might be a move to maybe less politicize the Oscars, because you're not having these big speeches. You're cutting down the amount of speeches, and a lot of these speeches over the past 5 years, I'd say, have a lot to do with politics and what's going on in the world. And they're actually, it's not just about thanking your mom and your dad, but it's trying to send a message using your celebrity as a platform.
Yeah.
And I don't think everyone is on board with that.
Yeah, and you can see that when you look at any, like, comment section about the Oscars.
Right.
It's like, oh, it's so politicized and everything that people don't want to tune in. Even though, by the way, the Oscars have always been political.
Oh, of course.
I don't know if people know that. I think a lot of people look back on this with, like, rose-colored glasses.
Completely.
Because, like, I don't know if people remember in 1972 when Marlon Brando won an Oscar for The Godfather, and he sent up a Native American actress.
That was a really big thing.
Yeah, to talk about the plight of the Native Americans in Hollywood and how they're disrespected. Like, that is very political. And people think, like, the Oscars were just this apolitical thing where nobody said anything important until now.
Which isn't true. It's
Which isn't
just,
true.
it seems to be a little more exaggerated now, probably. Maybe more unexpected. Because I feel like there were years that were kind of a little bit, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of a good word. I can't think of a word. They were a little more lighter, shall I say?
Right. I mean, even probably this year, 97, like, most of it is...
most of it's
just
kind of, yay, Oscars.
Titanic. We had a good time making it.
About the sinking ship.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like people are just kind of noticing now, which is kind of weird. But also, I feel like people are kind of, well, they're kind of going to the movies less, though, so I don't really think it's a sign.
Yeah, I think
I'm losing my thoughts.
No, but that is part of it, I think, is that, movies are becoming very expensive.
Yeah.
To physically go out to a movie theater.
You also have Netflix now and Amazon.
Right, which are huge distractions that are not necessarily free, but they
cheaper.
are a lot cheaper than just going out to see one movie. Like, you can have a Netflix subscription and have access to thousands of movies for the same amount of money that it takes to go out to the movies and see one.
Exactly.
And, like, maybe have concessions, like, maybe have popcorn, and that drives the price up even more.
Right.
Let alone if you're a family. Like, if you're a family going out to the theater, good luck, because that's incredibly expensive at this point.
Well, it's also an experience now to go to the movies.
Yeah.
The whole thing is an experience. It's not so much about the movie anymore as it is about the reclining seats and the cup holders and the concessions.
And so that's why people go to the movies and only see, like, big event blockbusters.
Right.
Where they feel like, they can actually get a big experience that they can't get at home on Netflix.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with hiding some of these categories from the public, especially because if you're going to hide them, I'm guessing you're not going to be doing Best Actor, Best Actress behind the scenes. You're going to do, like, audio or something more technical. Mm-hmm. And I think that sends the wrong message to people who want to be in this industry, because we do need more diversity. We need younger people who are willing to be in Hollywood, because right now there's not a whole lot of diversity, and that's a really big problem. Yeah. And you're seeing it in movies, and you're seeing it in TV shows. Mm-hmm. A little bit, it's improving, but it needs a lot more work.
It always needs work.
Yeah. And the kids who are going to college, for filmmaking, I don't know, you can put your nose to that, but it's a profession, and good for them. But I feel like they'll be really discouraged seeing that they're not being recognized, that's not being recognized, especially, costumes. And costumes are very important, too. I mean, if it hadn't been for the costumes in Titanic, honestly, it would have lost a lot of its appeal. And its setting. Right? Costumes they set the scene. It's like watching a play. The costumes set the scene. Mm-hmm. The scenery sets the scene. The scenery, right? The production design. So I feel like by doing these kind of things behind the scenes, not only are you're picking out the things that you think people don't care about or aren't important enough to show, but you're just sending the wrong message to people watching the Oscars.
Yeah. And also sending the wrong message to people who you're recognizing.
Yeah.
And like
Too.
the specific fields like sound and costumes and production design.
Right.
Where it's like everything on a Hollywood set is catered towards actors. And so it's like you have this one night where like you can recognize the costume designer and the cinematographer and the sound designer, the visual effects guys. And like
it takes a lot.
Editing
Is
film
insane.
editing alone. Yeah.
I mean, I edit like 3-minute videos right now, and it's a process.
And
it's
you're,
like
like,
an
tearing your
hour
hair out.
process.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine editing a movie.
Yeah.
I understand it a lot more now. I mean, obviously it's a lot different what I do, but I mean, I just understand how much editing affects the final product.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe that won't be, celebrated as much as it is now with with the Oscars.
Yeah, and people wouldn't really like care about like what actually goes into the process of making a movie.
Not only that, but looking forward into future movies, are you really going to have people who are taking, are you really going to get the best editor and the best person to do the sound, to do all that technical stuff, the best costumer? Are you really going to get those great people if they think they're going to be forgotten?
Right.
I mean, an Oscar is a huge honor.
Yeah.
It's always been a big deal. You're kind of just playing it down if you're doing it behind the scenes.
Yeah. Not great.
No.
That was my least favorite part of this announcement.
Yeah,
for me.
Mine too.
But most people are talking about the third aspect, which is the invention of a new category. And that is what they are calling Outstanding Achievement in Popular Film.
Which literally says nothing. Which
That's
is
the thing.
so vague.
That's what's led to everyone speculating
Very
and like
vague.
assuming the worst, is that like how do you even define popular film? Like, is it just going to be, the top 5 box office movies of the year? Is that all it is? It's just like whichever films were the most successful? There's
a lot of different ways to define popular.
Right.
It's best grossing movie. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean people liked it.
Yeah.
That means that it was publicized enough that people went to go see it
Pretty
to
much.
see what it was all about. That
That's
doesn't mean that they liked it.
That's like an award for marketing.
Exactly. That's an award for marketing. You're absolutely correct. Or you can define popular by a movie people genuinely liked, that they genuinely went to see because they wanted to see it, and they left the theater saying, wow, that was a great experience. Which is what you should feel when you leave a movie, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I mean,
and I just I'm just wondering, because like a lot of documentaries are doing really well this summer, oddly enough. There's kind of a pattern. And the Mr. Rogers documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, has made over $20 million. And that is really good for a documentary, like really, really good. But it's not like $100 million. So like I'm trying to figure out, like, are there parameters of like movies that only made over $100 million? Or is it like popularity within the specific genre of film? Like for a documentary, for example?
It's hard enough to pick for the Academy to pick nominations for best, and people agree with Best Picture nominees. Yeah, in another category, that's a whole other ballpark of figuring out how are we gonna do this?
Yeah.
How are we gonna figure this out?
Also,
what are the
why
parameters?
Are we doing this?
Yeah, why are we doing this? I'm just afraid that it's gonna lead to, like superhero movies getting Oscars, and I don't.
When they don't necessarily.
When they don't deserve it, or sequels and trilogies and all these recreations of movies.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said, this does not help the diversity of Hollywood.
No.
At all.
Yeah.
This actually damages any prospects of being more diverse.
And it creates a divide,
Yeah.
I think. Because, like, we literally just talked about Titanic, which was the number 1 movie of all time at that time.
Right.
I wonder if this was in place then, if they would have just been like, well, Titanic, it was a big blockbuster, it was a very popular film. Would they have just relegated Titanic to this category and then awarded something else in Best Picture, like LA Confidential? I just wonder, like, because I think Titanic deserves to be in the Best Picture conversation, and it deserved to win.
Yeah.
But I just wonder,
this...
like, what this feels like. It's like, you know, dividing.
It kind of feels
movies.
like it's just throwing a bone to some movies that maybe don't deserve it. Or don't deserve to be Oscar nominated.
And that's another thing, is that, like...
Yeah, can we talk about the connection here between the ABC that puts on the Oscars? That maybe this might be a connection?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like, for popular movies, you know, like, the award is the amount of money it made. Like, shouldn't that be enough? Like, if you make that much money... That's what the money is for, you know? You've gotten the honor of being loved by millions and millions of people.
Right.
Do you really need, like, another thing on top of that? I don't know. I don't know if it really helps a movie if it, like, just also wins Best Picture. Or not Best Picture, but whatever this is, Outstanding Achievement in Popular Film. Which, again... We don't know what that even means. Does it just go to the number one movie that made the most money? Like, what an outstanding achievement. You made a lot of money. Or is it outstanding, like, is it a movie we like that also made a lot of money? I don't know. I don't think they even know, because this announcement was so vague. That they literally said eligibility requirements and other key details will be forthcoming. So they don't know.
In February.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, I feel like a movie that made the most money shouldn't necessarily be nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
Or one that everyone has seen. I mean, I don't know a lot of people have seen Shape of Water, to be honest with you, and it won. I mean, but it was an incredible movie.
Yeah.
And again, it lines up with Titanic winning Best Picture, because you have that feeling, right? It's a feeling movie.
Yeah.
It's visually stunning. The story is romantic. It resonates with people today, the issues, but it's not set in today.
Right.
I mean, if you're gonna go, I don't know. I feel like it's gonna change the whole way people perceive the Oscars. It's gonna turn into like a Teen Choice Awards or something.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I don't know
Those kind of award shows.
I don't know why we're, like, taking inspiration from, like, the MTV Movie Awards.
That, like, are not, like, that's not,
right.
No one cares if you get MTV.
Because, like, the Oscars are the top awards ceremony of all of them.
Right.
So why are we, like, looking at other awards ceremonies to be like, we should be emulating them? Like, that just doesn't line up for me. So, I wanted to know from you, as someone who is not necessarily as awards obsessed as a lot of the people I talk to on this show, whether you think, like, things like making it a shorter ceremony or adding this popular film category, whether that would make you and other people you know even more interested in the Oscars.
Well, I agree the Oscars should be maybe a little bit shorter. It is a very long ceremony, and it's on a Sunday night. People have to work the next day. I literally sometimes take the day off the next day so I could stay up for the Oscars. But also, like, a lot of young people can't watch it either, like college students. It's a very long ceremony. But I feel like they're kind of taking away the wrong aspect of the Oscars. You're taking away the awards, which is the entire point of the Oscars.
Yeah.
That's the point. Maybe take away the comedic commentary and all these other weird introductions to awards. I don't know. Simplify it a little bit more.
Right.
I feel like maybe if you simplified it, it would be about the awards, and people maybe would be interested again. Rather, you just have these, celebrities that are not nominated for an Oscar being hosts and just kind of promoting themselves.
Yeah, doing these dumb little comedy routines.
Yeah, and basically promoting themselves.
Yeah.
It's become very much a marketing ploy to get the host that basically has the best late night show or is doing the best entertainment wise. It's not really someone who, I don't know, who's actually funny.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe cut that down a little bit.
For sure.
Cut down the in-between things.
And we don't need a segment every year where, like, we meet a bunch of normal people, quote unquote, and they're like, "Oh, we're at the Oscars.
Yeah,
what a
we
surprise."
don't need that at all. That's
No.
all staged.
Nobody
anyways.
cares about that.
No one cares about
And we
that.
honestly, I like some of the montages that they do.
Oh, yeah,
But we do
right.
not need 6 of them.
No, we really don't.
Like
we don't.
1 or 2 is fine.
Yeah.
We're good. We're cool with that.
Can we also like stop clapping during the in memoriam? It's like mad awkward when someone claps
like
louder
some people
for someone
are getting more applause than others.
for death.
Yeah. Not great.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. That's the only thing I would change. No, I truly think that yes, the Oscars should probably be a little bit shorter. I think more people will be interested.
Honestly, I think there's a pretty easy solution to this, is to just air it earlier.
Yeah, just air it earlier.
The Super Bowl airs at 6:30
Well,
Eastern time.
Isn't it airing? What is it? Isn't it airing like an earlier time because it's in California, right?
Well, no, it's
the same time.
it's at 8. It used to be 8:30, which is ridiculous, but now it's 8, which is decent. But at the same time, you still run over to like midnight ultimately, and so that's not great. I just think the solution is to just air it earlier, and if I think people will still watch it if it's just earlier. I think the issue is that like it runs into midnight and you're like, I can't stay up for all this.
Right.
Like this is an endurance test.
Yeah, it is. It's
So just start it at,
Best Picture is like dead last.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be, but also
'cause
like
it's
it's
the
a really
culmination.
long freaking wait.
yeah. How about
to get
start it
there.
at 7?
Yeah, let's start it.
Maybe you'll
earlier.
be done at
also,
10, which is
we
reasonable.
don't need the whole red carpet thing anymore. I'm sorry.
That's what a lot of people like, though.
No, a lot of people do like the red carpet, but it is very long.
Yeah.
It's a very drawn out, long thing. It's a little bit sexist. And there's a lot about the Oscars they should change. It really shouldn't be the awards that
Right.
they change.
That's like the thing they're most attacking at this point, and it's
Yeah.
like this is
Which
what
is weird. Like,
Yeah.
do you attack football in the Super Bowl? Like, no. No, you don't. You're not like, let's make the plays shorter, guys. Like, I don't know anything about football. You're, it's, I don't know. It's just taking away. It's hurting. It's hurting the industry.
right.
Because the Oscars is what people look forward to. That's the end of the award season.
Yeah, and it's like the Super Bowl of
Yeah.
movies, and
Exactly. I like how we're going back to this. We know nothing about football.
yeah, we have no idea what we're talking about. But it is in
I
a
don't
way,
like football.
for a lot of people, it is like the Super Bowl of like an artistic standpoint.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so by shortchanging the very thing that makes them appealing, I think that's not right.
Right.
And I do have more issue with doing some of the awards during commercial breaks than I necessarily do with the popular film category. But I think they're both part of a larger issue, which is the idea of like trying to chase ratings ultimately. Like ratings are all that matters.
Yeah.
And the actual what you're doing is irrelevant almost.
Pretty
as long
much.
as you get good ratings. And I think a lot of that is due to Disney and ABC, who are just greedy for everything, as if they don't have enough. And by just doing this, I feel like it just alienates the people who are most interested in awards and the Oscars itself, and chasing this like mythical idea of the casual person who watches the Oscars. I just don't think because somebody, loves Avengers Infinity War, now that the Oscars are going to honor that movie with like a popular film category,
Right.
I don't think that like that person who cares about that movie is just gonna watch the Oscars because they're gonna give Avengers Infinity War like one award
No, yeah, I don't.
in a 3-hour ceremony.
Yeah, no, I really don't think that that's gonna draw people in. I think it's actually gonna get rid of the people who actually like the Oscars.
Yeah, it's
I don't
making
know.
it's making a lot of people feel like question the intentions of the Academy, and that's like
Right.
not what they want right now. So I don't know. It's just very frustrating
Yes.
as someone who actually appreciates these Oscars.
It's also, the Oscars isn't about blockbuster movies. Sometimes, at rare occasions like Titanic, it is. But it's about the movies that, like, have a really good story and are actually good movies.
Yeah, regardless of how much money they made.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much. It doesn't matter who saw it. They're judging it on story and acting, and that's what it's about. I mean, you watch MTV Movie Awards if you want best movie ever, you know, if you want the popular movies.
Yeah.
But sometimes the popular movies end up being nominated for an Oscar. You just don't know.
Exactly.
And I think that you know, kind of being surprised about Oscar nominations sometimes, kind of the unexpected, the underdog or something, you just take that away when you make like a popular category.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree. Yeah. I hope that this is better than people are talking about, because I fear for the worst.
Sounds a little fearful.
Yeah. So with that, thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
For coming on the show. This is the longest episode ever.
I talk a lot and very fast.
There was a lot to cover. This is a huge year, and we also talked about this, so.
Yeah.
So if you want to tell people where they can find you on the internet.
Oh, okay. Not my address, but
I assumed. Go on.
Good. At Kus Reporter. It's my Twitter handle. So you can find me there. I usually tweet about news, but sometimes I retweet with Kevin about Hollywood things.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot of times, actually, I do that.
Yes.
This is a lot.
You like spam my notifications.
I really spam, yeah. I find like 11-hour posts and I just comment.
Yeah. And also you have a food blog, right?
Oh, I do.
You want to plug that?
Sure. The glutenfreemenu.wordpress.com. I talk about all the food I eat.
Boom.
It's gluten-free.
There you go. And you can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Jacobson. Same on Instagram. And you can find the podcast at Oscar Runner Up. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play. Please rate, review, and subscribe.
Woo.
And I will now leave it up to you listening at home to vote on whether you think Titanic rightfully won Best Picture or if LA Confidential should have taken it. And you can do that on my website at filmtrophies.com, or you can email me at filmtrophies@gmail.com. So with all that said, thank you again, Ashley.
You're welcome.
And I will bid you all adieu.